Are we all set? Okay. Good evening. I'll open this meeting at 2 minutes to 7. I'm Councillor Gary Collins and I will chair the subcommittee for this evening. I would like to introduce members of the subcommittee. Along with me this evening are Councillor Kent and Councillor Salmons. Also in attendance are the licensing officers Paul Adams, Elizabeth Cox, Paul the Parrot, and who is presenting the licensing case, please? Right, okay, so that's Elizabeth Cox will be the presenting officer. Legal advisors Lois Bland and our clerk Kenna Healy. I would like to remind everyone present that the first application of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, with a copy of the recording being published on the Council's website. For item 5, we'll go into exempt session. Before we start, I would like to explain the process of the hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present their report. Following this, members and all relevant parties will have the opportunity to ask any questions. Then each party will be given the opportunity to give their case. This is also followed by questions from members and all parties. Once everyone has presented their case, all parties will have time to give a closing summary, with the applicant having the final say. The subcommittee will then retire to consider its decision and will be accompanied by the clerk and legal advisor. We will then return with our decision. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Proceeding to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. There's no apologies.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 concerns urgent business. I have not been advised of any items of urgent business. No. Agenda item 3, declaration of interest. Can I invite members of the subcommittee to declare any interests? Councillor Salmons.
Just to advise that whilst EMR is within my ward, I'm quite sure that I've got an open mind as to hear the case, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salmons. Item 4 on the agenda, determination of application to renew a scrap metal dealer licence. Do any of the parties have any requests, in particular permission for another person to appear other than specified in their advance notice? For permission to cross-examine? Or any other requests? Okay. I would now like to ask the licensing officer to present the factual report, please.
Thank you, Chair. An application has been received for the renewal of a scrap metal dealer site licence from European Metal Recycling Limited to cover the sites at Station Road, East Tilbury and 13 to 19 Berth, Tilbury Dock. As part of the application, the applicant has declared they have received a relevant conviction. Following this meeting, the subcommittee should consider the report and appendices together with any oral submissions at this hearing and determine the application to grant the scrap metal site licence in line with the options open to the committee. European Metal Recycling Limited have been licensed under the Scrap Metal Dealers Act 2013 since its commencement for both sites. On the 13th of December, the application to renew their dealer's site licence to cover both sites was submitted. A copy of the full application form and the relevant appendices are attached to Appendix 1, which is at page 11. As part of the application, the relevant offence was declared. I won't read the whole details out, it's at 2.3 of the report. Following the notification, on the 13th of January 2023, the licensing department issued the company with a notice of intention to refuse the application to renew the scrap licence. A copy of the notice is attached to Appendix 2 at page 41. On the 13th of January, Nancy Gray, on behalf of the company, confirmed that they would be submitting representations, and this was followed up on the 25th of January 2023 with the full written representation by Chris Tinsley. This is attached to Appendix 3 at page 45. In addition, they also submitted a letter of support from the Port of Tilbury, which is attached to Appendix 4. As part of the application process, Essex Police and the Environment Agency are both consulted on the application and neither submitted any representations or comments. Following the hearing, the options available to the subcommittee are to grant the application as applied for, to refuse the application, or to grant the application with the inclusion of one or both of the following conditions: that the dealer must not receive scrap metal except between 9 and 5 on any day, and or that any scrap metal received must be kept in the form in which it is received for a specified period, not exceeding 72 hours, beginning with the time it is received. Under the Scrap Metal Act, these are the only conditions that can be attached to the licence. The Scrap Metal Dealers Act provides that the licensing authority must not issue or renew a scrap licence unless it is satisfied that the applicant is a suitable person to carry on a business as a scrap dealer. European Metal Recycling Limited may now not be considered to be a suitable licence holder as they have been convicted of a relevant offence as listed under the Scrap Metal Dealers Act 2013, prescribed relevant offences and relevant enforcement action. A copy of the legislation is attached at Appendix 5. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do any members have questions of the licensing officer?
No.
No, Chair.
Does the applicant have any questions to ask of the licensing officer at this stage? I would now like to ask the applicant to present their case, please.
Okay, is that better? Perhaps I can just introduce myself. I'm Chris Tinsley, Head of Legal from European Metal Recycling. It was my letter that referred to. Perhaps if I can just invite my colleagues to introduce themselves as well.
Good evening. My name's Herman Koch. I'm the Director for Safety, Health, Environment and Quality at European Metals Recycling UK.
Good evening, my name's Simon Masters and I'm the Area General Manager for Tilbury Docks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We need you to turn your microphones off. Not using.
So really the purpose of this presentation was really to try and address the concerns that have been raised in relation to the prosecution in 2021. So what I'd like to do, if I may, is just run through some of the key points that I tried to make in my letter and then just invite questions on those submissions, if that's okay. So the prosecution that's been referred to from 2021 arose as a result of a mistake. It wasn't a deliberate act, and the judge who sentenced EMR acknowledged that in his sentencing comments. EMR has an otherwise excellent compliance record, and prior to this prosecution, EMR had no convictions for any environmental offences in the previous 15 years, and it hasn't had any prosecutions since that date. This is not an insignificant achievement in view of the volume of waste that EMR handles. And just to give you an idea, in the years 2017 to 2020, EMR sent on average 377,000 tonnes of waste to landfill. So we do handle very significant quantities of waste. The judge also accepted that EMR's environmental compliance record indicates that EMR does have appropriate policies and procedures in place to ensure compliance with the regulatory regime. The incident which gave rise to the prosecution took place in 2016, 7 years ago. Since that time, EMR has made significant improvements to its policies and procedures to ensure, as far as possible, that such an incident does not happen again. EMR is a significant employer in the Thurrock area and invests in training and development for its employees there. The Tilbury Docks site, which is one of the sites relevant to the application, is a major site for the export of recycled steel in the southeast of England and is critical to the UK's drive to increase recycling and reduce carbon emissions. EMR is in the process of implementing a £9 million investment plan at Tilbury Docks, which is a major commitment to the Thurrock area. And EMR has also demonstrated its social and environmental responsibility through both its contributions to the local community and its commitments generally to sustainability. And in my letter, I tried to set out some examples of those. Importantly, I think the Environment Agency regulates EMR's operations at Tilbury Docks and East Tilbury. We hold waste permits for both of those sites. The EA regularly visits the sites to ensure that EMR is complying with all applicable laws and the conditions of its waste permits. If we weren't complying, then the Environment Agency would certainly take action, and that's not been the case. I note that the Environment Agency was consulted in relation to these applications has not objected to the application from EMR for the renewal of these licenses. In addition to that, since 2021, when the prosecution occurred, the Environment Agency has granted 18 applications from EMR for either new environmental permits or for the variation or transfer of existing permits. Why that's significant is because when those applications are made, it's the duty of the Environment Agency to consider whether or not EMR is a fit and proper person to operate from those sites and hold those permits, which is essentially the same considerations as for the committee today. And in every one of those applications, they have been granted by the EA, which indicates that the Environment Agency do consider EMR to be a competent and responsible operator. So I hope that reassures the committee that EMR is a responsible organisation, and on that basis that the committee will grant EMR's application for the renewal of these licences. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open this up to the members to ask questions, can I just clarify a couple of things? Regarding the Stowe Quarry incident, was the driver directed to unload at this particular point?
What happened was that EMR was looking for a site to dispose of this waste. We employed a specialist waste broker to try to find a suitable site. That waste broker recommended Stowe Quarry as a suitable site. We then sent one of our environmental team to do a duty of care audit at the site. The operator of the site did have a waste license. The coding of waste is quite technical, and what happened was that the person that we sent to inspect the site made a mistake and incorrectly thought that the waste permit allowed the type of waste that we had to dispose of to be disposed of at that site, and in fact it did not.
I see, thank you. And what sort of waste is this, please? It's just purely scrap metal?
It's when a vehicle goes through a shredder, obviously most of the metal is recovered as part of that process. There are also some plastics and other materials that we were able to recover to recycle. But inevitably there's a quantity of that material which is not capable of being recycled, so glass, wood, foam, materials like that. And it's that material. It's called automotive shredder residue in the trade. It had been sort of partially processed before being disposed of. Ordinarily, we would have sent that waste to a site we have in the West Midlands, where we'd have been able to process it further to try and recover more materials for recycling. But unfortunately, because the Environment Agency wanted us to remove the waste within a relatively short time frame from the site, we weren't able to process all of the material in the West Midlands, which was why we needed to find this alternative site for disposal.
See, so you was under some time pressure.
We were, yes.
Thank you. Do members have any questions to ask?
Yes, please, Chair. So,
Let's look at it.
on page 46 in your letter, it says that that you now include a peer review step to minimise the chance of an error being made. Can you explain a bit more about what peer review and how that will help prevent another error occurring, please?
So within my team, I've got a number of environmental specialists. So these would be people trained in environmental management and environmental law. Peer review means that there needs to be two sets of eyes to minimize the chance of a mistake that occurred. The mistake that occurred is a employee reviewed it and made an error in judgment on a subtle technicality. The review step is what would happen now is that person would do the audit, submit a report that would not be accepted. It would be reviewed by one of our environmental managers, both of whom are chartered environmentalists and experienced in the industry, and they would double check that before it proceeds. therefore minimizing a chance that one person can make a mistake on a technicality, as has happened in this case.
Can I ask another question, Chair?
Councillor
Is that
Kent,
okay?
yes.
Thank you, sorry. And you said that the classification for disposal of various waste is quite technical, and that was one of the error occurred. Can you give us reassurance that in your company that your employees are, or you're updating the employees regularly and making sure they're aware of all the different I mean, I haven't got a clue about these classifications, to be honest with you, but that your employees are all aware of the difference between the classifications, so that that helps with making sure this doesn't occur, please.
Yes, we've done a number of steps as additional controls. The first one is, as noted in our submissions, we've increased the capability of our business by employing what we call the waste and byproduct team, which is a few specialists dedicated to this area who have careers in the area of waste management. This wasn't in place at the time of the incident. They manage those transfers, and they check the transfers that occur from our facilities going outwards to any waste facilities on a regular basis to ensure that they're done. Therefore, apart from the environmental specialists we had in the time, we've increased the capability of the business. We also periodically now run training colleagues for training courses for commercial colleagues on waste classification to identify any potential issues, to understand the regulations, a basic understanding of regulations, so that they can refer any queries to the team of specialists on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kent. Okay, thank you. Does the licensing officer have any questions of the applicant, please?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the licensing officer to summarise their case, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, you've read the factual reports and you have seen Mr Tinsley's full representation and heard further tonight from himself and the team their explanations and how they've outlined how they now ensure better compliance with the thing. So it's now for the committee to decide how to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And could I ask the applicant to make a closing statement, please?
Not a great deal to add, really, other than that I hope that we've answered all your questions and concerns, but if there are any other questions that you think of after tonight's committee meeting, then please let us know and we'll, of course, try and answer those for you.
Okay, thank you. Has everyone said all they wish to say? Okay. The subcommittee will now retire to consider its decision and will be accompanied by the clerk and legal advisor to the subcommittee. Thank you. Okay, the subcommittee has returned to its deliberations, and I'll now ask the legal advisor to give the decision of the subcommittee to the applicant. Lois?
Thank you, Chair. The licence is granted. Subcommittee accepts that the earlier offence was occasioned by an administrative error rather than by a deliberate act or negligence, and as such is appropriate to grant the licence at sought. Subcommittee noted that no objections have been received from Essex Police or the Environment Agency, and find comfort in the new procedures and training courses implemented since the offence. This decision will be communicated in full within 5 working days. Parties are reminded to their right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Good evening. I'm Councillor Collins. I will chair the subcommittee for this meeting. I'd like to introduce members of the subcommittee. Along with me this evening are Councillor Kent and Councillor Salmons. Also in attendance are the licensing officers Paul Adams, Elizabeth Cox and Paula Parrott. Could you please advise me which one's presenting the case? No, right, Paula will be presenting the case. Legal advisors are Lois Bland and the clerk is Kenna Healy. I would like to remind everyone present that the first application of this meeting will be going into exempt session. I'll come back to that in a moment. Before we start, I would like to explain the process of this hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present their report. Following this, members and all relevant parties will have the opportunity to ask questions. Then each party will be given the opportunity to give their case. This is also followed by questions from the members and all parties. Once everyone has presented their case, all parties will have time to give a closing summary, with the applicant having their final say. The subcommittee will then retire to consider its decision and will be accompanied by the clerk and the legal advisor. We will then return with our decision. Are members in agreement to go into exempt session as information may relate to an individual? Yep.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. So item 5, the agenda review of a hack